When I was growing up, I was lucky enough that money wasn't really a problem for my family, at least for most of my childhood. My family and I lived in an above-average sized home in a good neighborhood. My siblings and I went to a private school, and my parents had plenty of savings. Everything changed when the recession hit and my dad lost his job. Sure, we had money in the bank, but there were bills to be paid. Private school wasn't cheap. After a few months of my dad struggling to find a job, my parents came up with an idea. We had a finished basement with both a small kitchen and a bathroom. They decided to rent it out to a tenant. Over the course of the year, we had a few different tenants. They were mostly college kids not able to afford their own place yet. They would stay until the end of the semester and then would be on their way again. The system worked out pretty well. We could afford to keep the house and keep going to the same schools. After a few months of not having any tenants, my parents rented out the basement to this guy named Robbie. Robbie was the first tenant we ever had that I got a bad vibe from. He was middle-aged, single, and stared at me in a way that made me very uncomfortable. I told my parents how I felt, but they just told me that we needed the money and we couldn't afford to be picky. My parents laid down the rules for Robbie. There weren't many of them. Rent was due on the first of the month, he was never allowed to come upstairs where my family lived without permission, and no loud music that would be disturbing to us. Robbie seemed fine with all of the rules. After all, he had a good deal. Aside from rent, he wasn't going to have to pay for any utilities like water or power. For a while, things seemed to be okay. Robbie seemed quiet and kept to himself. He paid his rent on time. But it didn't take long for things to start getting a little weird. Robbie always seemed to be around when I was. When I got home from school, he just so happened to be getting home from work at the same time. When I was shoveling snow in the driveway, he just so happened to be working on his car nearby. Every time we would run into each other, he would stare at me with this strange, creepy, almost hungry look. I did my best to avoid him, and when we did bump into each other, I avoided eye contact. On Friday night, my parents were visiting my aunt and uncle, and my little sisters were at a sleepover. I had the house all to myself. Well, if you didn't count Robbie living in our basement. It was a few weeks before Christmas, and I was watching Home Alone in the living room with only the lights from the Christmas tree to light up the room. Once the movie was over, I decided to do a TikTok live. I didn't have a ton of followers or anything, and the ones I did have were just mostly friends from school. But it was still fun. Plus, we were on Christmas break and I missed my friends. When I started my live, I had about 10 people join me. I was telling them about what I had been up to since school let out and was asking my viewers what their plans were for the holidays. I was scrolling through the comments when one from my friend Megan stood out. "Girl, who is that guy behind you?" it said. I whirled around, but I couldn't see anything. "What guy? Did any of the rest of you see a guy behind me?" I asked the rest of the people watching on my live. To my shock, many of them commented yes. "He was behind the couch," one comment read. "Are you guys messing with me?" I asked, still wondering if this was some sort of prank. "If you're messing with me, tell me right now, because I'm home alone and getting really freaked out," I said, my voice shaking. Just then I got a call from Megan, so I ended my live to answer. "Girl, there is a man in your house. I am not kidding. I would never joke about something like this," she said. She sounded panicked, and it only scared me more. I began flipping the lights on in the living room and in the kitchen. I couldn't see anyone. "Are you sure it wasn't just a shadow or something?" I asked Megan, my heart pounding like crazy. "No, I saw him. He had a beard and these weird glasses that looked like they were from the 70s, Megan said. I stopped dead in my tracks. She had just described what Robbie looked like. "Meg, I have to go," I told her. "Call the police!" she screamed just before I hung up. I looked around the kitchen for a weapon. We didn't have any knives big or sharp enough to cause any damage. My eyes fell on my dad's toolbox, sitting beside the refrigerator. He had used it to fix a leaky pipe that morning. I opened it up and saw a hammer on top. I grabbed it and then began making my way through the rest of the house as quietly as I could. I figured that Robbie would have realized he had been spotted and would disappear back down into the basement, but I couldn't be sure. It wasn't like I could go downstairs to check. I needed to make sure that the rest of the house was clear and that Robbie wasn't trying to steal anything from us. After I made sure that he wasn't downstairs, I knew it was time to check the upstairs. The thought of Robbie hiding in one of our rooms upstairs terrified me. It felt like a violation of privacy that creep could be in one of the rooms where my family slept. I made my way very slowly up the stairs, trying to make as little noise as possible. It was very dark, but I couldn't turn the lights on. If I did, Robbie would know I was there. The first room I checked was my parents'. I looked under the bed and in the closet but found nothing. Everything looked how it should. The next room I checked was my own. It was completely untouched. Finally, I made it to the room where my little twin sisters slept. It was messy as usual. There were clothes on the floor and Barbies everywhere. Ava's side of the room looked normal enough, but I noticed a bulge underneath the covers of Gretchen's bed. She probably just hid her stuffed animals under there again after a fight with her sister. I was about to leave the room when a strange feeling came over me. I looked back at the bulge on Gretchen's bed and had a terrible thought that went through my head. My heart was pounding so loud that I felt like someone would be able to hear it on the other side of the room. Carefully, I made my way over to the bed. I stared at it for a few moments, holding my breath, and then in one sudden motion, I ripped the covers back. I screamed at the top of my lungs when I came face to face with Robbie, laying in my sister's bed. "You freak! Get out of our house!" I screamed, hitting him with the hammer as hard as I could. I only got a few hits in before Robbie was up and had grabbed me by the wrists. He was strong, stronger than he looked. He pinned me down on the floor and put his hand over my mouth to keep me from screaming. "You never saw me here. You watched a movie and then you went to bed," he told me in a scary voice. "That's what you're going to tell your parents. Tell them anything else and I'll stab you in your sleep. That's a promise." Just then, there was a familiar rumbling sound from downstairs. It was the garage door opening. That meant my parents were home. Robbie shot me one last scary look before taking off down the stairs. I sat on the floor for a few minutes trying to catch my breath. Robbie was dangerous, and maybe even armed. I needed to warn my parents without him finding out. I noticed a Tinkerbell notebook laying on the floor and I got an idea. I grabbed the notebook and in a red marker quickly began to scribble out a message. Robbie was in the girls' room. He tried to attack me. We need to get out of the house and call the police, I wrote. I walked downstairs just as my parents were walking in and hanging up their coats. My mom smiled when she saw me. "Hi, honey, did you have a nice night?" she asked. I didn't answer. I just handed her the paper. When she read it, her face went white. "Randy, come over here," she called to my dad. As soon as my dad read the note, he went into a complete rage. "Where is he? I'll take care of him," he shouted, heading towards the basement door. "No, Dad, please. We have to get out of here. Let the police deal with him," I begged. Eventually, I was able to calm my dad down enough to leave the house and go next door to the neighbors. While we were there, we called the police. It didn't take them long to find Robbie. He was hiding in a tube slide at the neighborhood playground. After Robbie was arrested, my parents and I went down to the basement for the first time since he had begun living there. In his bedroom was the scariest thing I've ever seen in my life. It was a collage that took up the entire wall. It was pictures of my sisters and me asleep. Robbie had been coming upstairs and taking pictures of us without us knowing for months, maybe longer. The police ended up coming and taking it all away for evidence. For now, at least, Robbie's in jail. My dad says we're done renting out the basement. I got into TikTok in 2020 just like a lot of other people. I didn't post any videos, but I loved watching them. I could scroll through the app for hours. What I thought was just an innocent app to help kill time turned out to be one of the scariest experiences of my life. It started with this friend request from an anonymous person. I figured it was just a bot, but I accepted it anyways. The next thing I knew, the person started sending me messages. So many messages. The person went on and on about how beautiful I was, which didn't make any sense since I didn't have any pictures or videos of myself connected to my account. I messaged the account back and said, "I think you have the wrong person." I then went to their profile to see if I could get any clues as to who this person was. They didn't have any pictures of themselves, and there was no real name associated with the account. Strangely, I was the only one they were following. I decided it was probably some sort of scam, so I just ignored it and kept scrolling. I forgot about this strange account until the next night. I was scrolling through TikTok like I always did before going to bed and noticed that I had been tagged in a video. Much to my surprise, it was the bot who had added me the day before. They had posted a video of a bouquet of red roses and a box of chocolate candy. "Only the best for my queen, Amelia," the caption read, along with my username. Was this person pretending to date me? I messaged them back saying, "Who is this? Do I know you?" But there was no response. The next day, I got a message from the office of my apartment building saying that there was a package for me that had been delivered. I was surprised since I hadn't ordered anything. Much to my surprise, when I walked downstairs, I saw that my delivery was a bouquet of red roses and a present wrapped in gold paper. When I got back up to my apartment, I unwrapped it. Inside was a fancy-looking box of French chocolates and a thin, see-through nightgown. I opened up the note and it said, "Send me a picture of yourself wearing this and I'll tell you who I am. Love, your secret admirer." I was creeped out and not the least bit flattered. Some creep from the internet had found out my address and now was using it to try and get inappropriate pictures of me. I tossed the nightgown aside and dumped the chocolates in the trash. For all I knew, they could be poison. Then I grabbed my phone and wrote a quick message to my so-called secret admirer. "Look, I don't know who you are or why you're doing this, but you're not getting any pictures from me, so you might as well just leave me alone." The next night, I went out to a bar with some of my friends, eager to get out my stress and have a nice time. I had all but forgotten about my creepy secret admirer until I got tagged in another video from him. My eyes widened in shock and confusion as I realized that the video was taken from inside my own apartment. I watched in horror as a gloved hand reached out to pet my puppy Buddy. The camera moved slowly through my apartment until the person filming was in my bedroom. They walked over to my dresser and opened the drawer where my underwear was kept. After rummaging through them for a few moments, the camera changed direction and zoomed in on a framed picture that was sitting on my bedside table. It was a picture of my 10-year-old sister, Olivia. Then, the video suddenly ended. "Are you out having fun without me, Amalia? I'll be waiting for you when you get home," the caption read, tagging my profile again. I stepped out of the loud, crowded bar and dialed 911, my fingers shaking. I told them that I wasn't home, but someone had broken into my apartment. I then called an Uber to take me back to my apartment building so I could meet the police there. When the police got to my building, they found it empty, but with the door left open. Whoever had been there knew what they were doing because they didn't leave any fingerprints. The account that had posted the video had been deleted, and I had no evidence to show them. The police told my apartment manager that they would have to change the locks on my door and increase their security, but other than that, nothing else was done. It's been a few months now, and I haven't heard back from my stalker, but I don't feel safe. He's still out there somewhere, and I'm sure he's watching me. During the quarantine, my parents were especially strict about what my siblings could and couldn't do. We were not allowed to visit with friends, not even if we stayed 6 feet away. This meant a lot of long, boring days spent inside. Even though I always thought it was supposed to be for younger kids, I got really into TikTok during this time. I was especially into cooking videos. I would find new recipes and try them out for fun. Most of the videos on my For You page were pretty fun and lighthearted. That's why I was particularly interested when I came across a TikTok of a woman who said she had just found out that her husband was having an affair with someone from his work. She seemed really distraught and was asking her followers what she should do to get back at him. Most people commented pretty reasonable suggestions like file for divorce or get a lawyer. But one person suggested that she put poison in her husband's coffee. I figured they were just joking or maybe exaggerating, but I was surprised when I noticed that the woman who had made the video had liked and even pinned the comment. She couldn't be serious, could she? I quickly clicked on her profile to see if she had any more recent videos. There were 2 more that I hadn't seen yet. I gasped as I clicked on the first one and watched the woman stir rat poison into a mug full of coffee. "Coffee for my adoring husband," the caption read. Oh no, I thought to myself. My fingers began to shake as I clicked on the most recent video the woman had posted. It was shared just 15 minutes earlier, and it didn't have very many views yet. I screamed out loud as I clicked on the video and saw a middle-aged man slumped over at a dining room table, blood coming out of his nose and mouth. I called 911 right away and told them what I saw. They told me that I wasn't the first person to call this in. In fact, a few other people had reported seeing the same video. The only problem was that the account had been deleted. What? That's not possible, I just saw it seconds ago, I said, pulling up TikTok. I had favorited the video, so I could go back to it. But sure enough, it was gone. I haven't heard anything more from the police, and they won't tell me anything about the case. They said it's a private investigation. Every day I wonder whether or not the man survived. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to check out one of our newest videos on Anna Horror, 3 terrifying school trip horror stories. It's guaranteed to send a shiver down your spine. Sleep tight.